Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom. Mir, ni hao, buenos dias, buenos tardes, hezeche, akwaba, welcome. What up, though? This is Storytelling Therapy, session numero 3. Today we have 5 stories. These include Gift to Hummingbird, Princess and Pea, Chikataro, Ikatomi, and Marriage of Yitzhak Avinu and Rivka Imotenu. The first story is Gift to Hummingbird. This is a story from traditional Mayan heritage. It comes from the website native-languages.org. And this is the story. Zunu, the hummingbird, was created by the Great Spirit as a tiny, delicate bird with extraordinary flying ability. She was the only bird in the kingdom who could fly backwards and who could hover in one spot for several seconds. The hummingbird was very plain. Her feathers had no bright colors, yet she didn't mind. Zunu took pride in her flying skill and was happy with her life despite her looks. When it came time to be married, Zunu found that she had neither a wedding gown nor a necklace. She was so disappointed and sad that some of her best friends decided to create a wedding dress and jewelry as a surprise. Ya, the vermilion-crowned flycatcher, wore a bright crimson ring of feathers around his throat in those days. He decided to utilize it as a gift, so he tucked a few red plumes in his crown and gave the rest to the hummingbird for her necklace. Uchilchil, the bluebird, generously donated several blue feathers for her gown. The vain Motmot, not to be outdone, offered further turquoise, blue, and emerald green. The cardinal likewise gave some red ones. Then Yuyum, the oriole, who was an excellent tailor as well as an engineer, sewed up all the plumage into an exquisite wedding gown for little hummingbird. Alayum, the spider, crept up with a fragile web woven of shiny gossamer threads for her veil. She helped Mrs. Yuyum weave intricate designs into the dress. Kanak, the honeybee, heard about the wedding and told all his friends who knew and liked the hummingbird. They brought much honey and nectar for the reception and hundreds of blossoms that were Zunu favorites. Then the azar tree dropped a carpet of petals over the ground where the ceremony would take place. She offered to let Zunu and her groom spend their honeymoon in her branches. Pakal, the orange tree, put out sweet-smelling blossoms, as did Nikte, the plumeria vine. Haaz, the banana bush, Op, the custard apple tree, and Pichian Put, the guava and papaya bushes, made certain that their fruits were ripe so the wedding guests would find delicious refreshments. And finally, a large band of butterflies in all colors arrived to dance and flutter very brightly around the hummingbird's wedding site. When the wedding day arrived, Zunu was so surprised, happy, and grateful that she could barely twitter her vows. The Great Spirit was so admired at her humility, her humbleness, her honest soul, that the Great Spirit sent word down with the Great Spirit's messenger, Cozumel, the swallow, that the hummingbird could wear her wedding gown for the rest of her life. And to this day she has. That is the story of the gift to the hummingbird. The next story is The Princess and the Pea. This comes from Deutsch tradition, Central European, Northern European tradition. It is a Grimm's Brothers story, and it comes from the website Grimm's Stories. This is The Princess and the Pea. Once upon a time, there was a prince who wanted to marry a princess, but she would have to be a true princess. He traveled all over the world to find one, but nowhere could he get what he wanted. There were princesses enough, but it was difficult to find out whether they were true ones. There was always something about them that was not as it should be. So he came home again and was sad, for he would have liked very much to have a true princess. One evening a terrible storm came on. There was thunder and lightning, and the rain poured down in torrents. Suddenly a knocking was heard at the city gate, and the old king went to open it. It was a princess standing out there in front of the gate. But heavens gracious, what a sight! The rain and the wind had made her look. The water ran down from her hair and clothes. It ran down into the toes of her footwear and out again at the heels. And yet she said that she was a true princess. Well, we'll soon find that out, thought the old queen. But she said nothing, went into the bedroom, took all the bedding off the bedstead, and laid a pea on the bottom. Then she took 20 mattresses and laid them on the pea, and then 20 elder down beds on top of the mattresses. On this the princess had to lie all night. In the matin she was asked how she had slept. Oh, very badly, she said. I have scarcely closed my eyes all night. Heaven only knows what was in the bed, but I was lying on something hard, so that I am black and blue all over my body. It's horrible. Now they knew that she was a true princess, because she had felt the pea right through the 20 mattresses and the 20 elder down beds. Nobody but a true princess could be as sensitive as that. So the prince took her for his wife, and now he knew that he had a true princess, and the pea was put in the museum, where it may still be seen if no one has stolen it. That is the story of the Princess and the Pea. The Princess and the Pea. The next story is Chikataro. Chikataro is a traditional folk tale from Japan. This is a synopsis of a recent translation of the book provided by Yoshitomo Imai and the website Books from Japan. Once upon a time, a poor elderly couple were taking their first bath in a long while. Off came all the dirt, in heaps and heaps. The couple shaped the dirt into a little doll they called Konbi Taro, Konbi meaning grime, and raised it with loving affection. Konbi Taro ate and grew to be a strapping young fellow. Renaming himself Chikataro, Strongman Taro, he sets off into the world to see what benevolence he might do, carrying a hefty iron club in one hand as he thunders down the trail. Stomp, stomp, thump. Stomp, stomp, thump. Along the way he is challenged by two other powerful men, one carrying an entire chapel on his back, and another rolling a huge stone. When he beats them, they are so impressed by his strength that they decide to join him on his travels. The companions soon come to a large town, where not a soul is in sight except for the wealthiest man's daughter, who is weeping in front of her house. Learning that an evil monster has been terrorizing the neighborhood, the three men do battle to chase it away. Chikataro marries the rich man's daughter. The other two find brides as well, and they call the old couple to come live with them happily ever after. That is the story of Chikataro. The next story is Ikitomi. Ikitomi comes from Lakota tradition. He is the trickster. This particular story of Ikitomi is entitled Ikitomi and the Young Man. This is provided actually from Internet Sacred Text Archive. Sacred-text.org, I think. Internet Sacred Text Archive. This is the story of Ikitomi and the Young Man. There was a young man who had many horses and plenty of adornments. He had 4 sisters who made ornaments of quill work, painted robes for him, and made plenty of clothing, so that he was always well dressed and finely painted and had plenty of everything. A great chief had a young and beautiful daughter. She was industrious and could make beautiful quill work and paint robes, and she could tan skins and make beneficial clothing. This chief sent word to this young man that he would give him his daughter for a wife. The young man dressed in his finest clothing, putting on quilled moccasins and quilled leggings and beaded breechcloth. He took with him a fine pipe and a beaded tobacco sack. He wrapped about him a fine buffalo robe of a young cow taken when the hair was the best, which his sisters had tanned soft and white, and upon which his adopted Moor had painted her dream. He took with him a love medicine that was made by the oldest shaman amongst all the people, and a flute upon which he had learned to play love songs. When he started for the chief's house, his eldest sister said to him, "Watch for Ikitomi. Do not let him fool you." The young man replied, "I'm too wise. Ikitomi can't fool me." He went on his way, thinking about the beautiful young girl he was to have for his wife. When he came to a spring of water, he sat down in the shade and played a love song on his flute. Whilst he was playing, another young man appeared before him, but he was very poor and had only the poorest kind of clothing. All he had was a breechcloth and an old ragged robe, but he was handsome looking and strong. He said to the young man, "You play a love song very well. If you should play that way to a young woman, she would take you for her man." This pleased the young man, for he thought that he would play that way for the chief's daughter. He lighted his pipe and gave the other man a smoke. Then the other young man said, "I would like to hear you play again." So he played another song, and the second young man said, "Oh, that is further pleasing than the other. No young woman could hear you play that and resist you." This pleased the young man, so that he said, "I will teach you to play that way, so that you may also get a woman." He taught the other young man to play like he did. Then the other young man said, "I think you are very strong. Let us wrestle to see who is the stronger." They wrestled, and the young man threw the second young man. Then the poor young man said, "I think you are a great hunter. Let us shoot the arrow and see who can make the best shot." They shot arrows at a target, and the young man made the best shot. Then the other young man said, "Let us run a race and see who can run the fastest." They ran 100 paces, and the young man won the race. Then the other young man said, "Let us run around this spring and know who can run the greatest distance." But the young man said, "No. Let us run to that high hill, a long way off and back." The other young man agreed to this. The young man stripped himself of all his clothing except his breechcloth. He piled all his fine clothing, his pipe, his robe, and the flute near the spring. The other young man said, "Let us hide our clothing. Someone may come and take everything whilst we are running." They hid their clothing, the young man putting his clothing in a pile, and the other young man putting his robe at another place. The way they had to run was very hilly, and the other young man said, "I run very slow down a hill, but I run very fast up a hill." The young man said, "I run very fast down a hill, but I cannot run so fast up a hill." Then the other young man said, "You had better run as fast as you can down the hills, because I will run by you up the hills if you don't." They started from the spring up a hill, and the other young man ran as fast as he could up the hill and reached the top first. But then they ran downhill, and the other young man ran very slowly, and the young man ran as fast as he could and passed him very quickly, so that he was at the top of the next hill before the other man was at the bottom of the first hill. Then the young man looked back at the other young man and laughed and cried out to him, "I will beat you badly, for I will be at the top of the next hill before you will come in sight of on top of this hill." Then the other young man said, "Yes, that is so. Do not wait for me." So the young man ran on easily, for he knew he could beat the other young man. Before the other young man got to the bottom of the first hill, he turned round and ran quickly back to the spring, and took all the young man's clothing, his robe, the pipe, and the elk teeth, and the flute, and ran on the trail to the chief's teepee. When the young man got to the high hill, he sat down to rest, for he thought he could beat the other young man easily now. He waited, but the other young man did not come. Then he thought he was lost, so he went slowly back over the way he had run to look for him. When he got to the spring, he looked about but did not find him. So he said, "I will put on my clothing and take my things, and then I will hunt for him." But when he went for his things, he found them all gone. Then he knew that the other young man was Ikitomi. He started to run as fast as he could on the trail to the chief's teepee, but he had run so much that he was tired, and he could not run very fast. It was very late at night when he got to the chief's teepee. He found that Ikitomi had gotten there very early in the day, and had given the chief a smoke of kansasa, so that the chief was pleased. Ikitomi had given the chief's daughter all the elk teeth, so that she was pleased. He had played to her on the flute the love songs he had taught him, so that she could not resist him, and she had taken Ikitomi for her man. When the young man came dressed in his breechcloth and the old ragged robe that Ikitomi had left, they would not believe him that when he said he was the young man to whom the chief had promised his daughter. They let him eat at the feast and then told him to go on away. He went home and told his sisters. His oldest sister said, "I told you to watch out for Ikitomi." And that is the story of Ikitomi and the young man. The fifth story for today is the marriage of Yitzhak Avinu and Rivka Imotenu. This story comes from Torah, from the tradition of Israel. It is specifically Bereshit chapter 24, Genesis chapter 24. Translation is provided from Chabad. And Avraham was old, advanced in days, and Elohim had blessed Avraham with everything. And Avraham said to his servant, the elder of his house, who ruled over all that was his, Please place your hand under my thigh, and I will adjure you by Elohim, the God of the heaven and the God of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose midst I dwell. But you shall go to my land and to my birthplace, and you shall take a wife for my son, for Yitzhak. And the servant said to him, Perhaps the woman will not wish to go after me to this land. Shall I return your son to the land from which you came? And Abraham said to him, Beware lest you return my son back there. Elohim, God of the heavens, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, and who spoke about me, and who swore to me, saying, To your seed will I give this land. Elohim will send Elohim's angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. And if the woman will not wish to go after you, you will be absolved of this my oath. Only do not return my son back there. And the servant placed his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and he swore to him concerning this matter. And the servant took 10 camels of his master's camels, and he went, and all the best of his master was in his hand. And he arose, and he went to Aram Naharaim in the city of Nahor. And he made the camels kneel outside the city beside the well and of water at eventide, at the time the maidens go out to draw water. And he said, O Elohim, the God of my master Avraham, please cause it to happen to me today, and perform loving kindness with my master Avraham. Behold, I am standing by the water fountain, and the daughters of the people of the city are coming out to draw water. And it will be that the maiden to whom I will say, Lower your pitcher, and I will drink, and she will say, Drink, and I will also water your camels. Her have you designated for your servant, for Yitzhak, and through her may I know that you have performed loving kindness with my master. Now he had not yet finished speaking, and behold, Rivka came out, who had been born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, and her pitcher was on her shoulder. Now the maiden was of very comely appearance, a virgin, and no man had been intimate with her, and she went down to the fountain, and she filled her pitcher and went up. And the servant ran towards her, and he said, Please let me sip a little water from your pitcher. And she said, Drink, my master. And she hastened and lowered her pitcher to her hand, and she gave him to drink. And she finished giving him to drink, and she said, I will also draw for your camels until they have finished drinking. And she hastened, and she emptied her pitcher into the trough, and she ran again to the well to draw water, and she drew for all his camels. And the man was astonished at her, standing silent, waiting to know whether Elohim had caused his way to prosper or not. Now it came about, when the camels had finished drinking, that the man took a golden nose ring, weighing 1/2 shekel, and 2 bracelets for her hands, weighing 10 gold shekels. And he said, Whose daughter are you? Please tell me. Is there a place for us for lodging in your father's house? And she said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. And she said to him, Both straw and fodder are plentiful with us. There is also a place to lodge. And the man kneeled and prostrated himself to Elohim. And he said, Blessed is Elohim, the God of my master, Avraham, who has not forsaken Elohim's loving kindness and Elohim's truth from my master. For as for me, Elohim led me on the road to the house of my master's kinsman. And the maiden ran, and she told her Moor's house what had happened. Now Rivka had a brother whose name was Lavan, and Lavan ran to the man outside to the fountain. And it came to pass, when he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's hands, And when he heard the words of his sister Rivkah, saying, so did the man speak to me, that he came to the man, and behold, he was standing over the camels at the fountain. And he said, come, you who are blessed of Elohim, why should you stand outside when I have cleared the house and a place for the camels? So the man came to the house and unmuzzled the camels, and he gave straw and fodder to the camels, and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. And food was set before him to eat, and he said, I will not eat until I have spoken my words. And he said, speak. And he said, I am Avraham's servant, and Elohim blessed my master exceedingly, and he became great. And Elohim gave him sheep and cattle, silver and gold, manservants and maidservants, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master after she had become old, and he gave him all that he possesses. And my master adjured me, saying, you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I dwell. Instead, you must go to my father's house and to my family, and take a wife for my son. And I said to my master, perhaps the woman will not follow me. And he said to me, Elohim, before whom I walked, will send Elohim's angel with you and make your way prosper, and you shall take a wife for my son, from my family, and from my father's house. You will then be absolved from my oath when you come to my family, and if they do not give her to you, you will be absolved from my oath. So I came today to the fountain, and I said, O Elohim, God of my master Avraham, if you desire to prosper my way upon which I am going, behold, I am standing by the water fountain. When a maiden comes out to draw water, I will say to her, please give me a little water to drink from your pitcher. And if she will say to me, you too may drink, and I will also draw water for your camels. She is the woman whom Elohim has designated for my master's son. I had not yet finished speaking thus in my heart, and behold, Rivkah came out with her pitcher on her shoulder, and she went down to the fountain and drew water, and I said to her, please give me to drink. And she hastened and lowered her pitcher from upon her, and she said, drink, and I will also water your camels. So I drank, and she also watered the camels. And I asked her, and I said, whose daughter are you? And she replied, the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Nahor, whom Milcah bore to him. And I placed the nose ring on her nose and the bracelets on her hands. And I kneeled and I prostrated myself to Elohim, and I blessed Elohim, the God of my master Avraham, who led me on the true path to take the daughter of my master's brother for his son. And now, if you will do loving kindness and truth with my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, and I will turn to the right or to the left. And Lavan and Bethuel answered and said, the matter has emanated from Elohim. We cannot speak to you either bad or beneficial. Behold, Rivkah is before you, take her and go, and let her be a wife for your master's son, as Elohim has spoken. Now it came to pass, when Abraham's servant heard their words, that he prostrated himself on the ground to Elohim. And the servant took out silver articles and golden articles and garments, and he gave them to Rivkah, and he gave delicacies to her brother and to her more. And they ate and drank, he and the men who were with him, and they lodged, and they arose in the matin, and he said, send me away to my master. And her brother and her more said, let the maiden stay with us a year or 10 months. Afterwards she will go. But he said to them, do not delay me, since Elohim has made my way prosperous. Send me away, and I will go to my master. And they said, let us call the maiden and ask her. And they summoned Rivkah, and they said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will go. So they sent away Rivkah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rivkah and said to her, our sister, may you become thousands of myriads, and may your seed inherit the cities of their enemies. And Rivkah and her maidens arose and rode on the camels, and they followed the man, and the servant took Rivkah and left. Now Yitzhak was on his way coming from Be'er Lachai Ra'i, and he dwelt in the land of the south. And Yitzhak went forth to pray in the field towards evening, and he lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, camels were approaching. And Rivkah lifted her eyes and saw Yitzhak, and she let herself down from the camel. And she said to the servant, who is that man walking in the field towards us? And the servant said, he is my master. And she took the veil and covered herself. And the servant told Yitzhak all the things he had done. And Yitzhak brought her to the tent of Sarah his more, and he took Rivkah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And Yitzhak was comforted for the loss of his more. That is the story of the marriage of Yitzhak Avinu and Rivkah Imotenu. And that is the conclusion of this session numero 3 of storytelling therapy. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mir, zaijen, adios, te jakaris, esempe na asamuje, kile ufred, one love and peace, happiness.
liberation.